All right, let's pull back the curtain on one of the biggest, most talked about financial mysteries out there. How do some of the wealthiest people on the planet legally pay little to no income tax? We're going to get right into it.
You've seen the headlines, right? You've heard the stories, and it just doesn't seem to make any sense. But what if I told you this isn't really about cheating? It's about playing a completely different financial game with a totally different set of rules. Today, we're going to break down that exact playbook.
So here's the absolute key to understanding all of this. There are basically two different tax universes. Most of us, you and me, we live in the income tax world. We earn a salary and a chunk of that goes straight to taxes. Simple. But the ultra-wealthy, they operate in the billionaires tax world. The focus there isn't on a paycheck. It's all about making assets grow. And the main goal is to legally get the tax on all that growth as close to zero as humanly possible.
And I gotta be really clear here. The strategies we're about to walk through are, by and large, completely legal. This isn't some movie plot about hiding money on a secret island. Nope, this is about being an absolute master of the existing tax code and structuring your wealth in a way that's just fundamentally different.
The entire playbook, when you boil it all down, really comes down to mastering three core pillars. First, you figure out how to avoid creating taxable income in the first place. Second, you make an entire lifetime of investment gains just disappear for tax purposes. And third, you pass that massive fortune onto your heirs almost completely tax-free. So let's kick things off with pillar number one.
Now, this first idea is going to sound completely backward to most people. How on earth do you fund a multi-million-dollar lifestyle without ever getting a paycheck? The answer is debt. But trust me, it's not the kind of debt that you and I are used to.
The number one objective here is dead simple. Avoid ordinary income like the plague. Why? Because things like salaries, wages, bonuses, that's the stuff that gets taxed at the highest possible rates in the tax code. So step one in the playbook is to just take yourself right out of that game entirely.
So how do they do it? They use this incredibly powerful financial tool called a securities-backed line of credit, or an SB lock for short. You could think of it like this. It's a loan you get from a bank, but instead of using your house as collateral, you use your massive investment portfolio, all your stocks, your bonds, your assets.
And this little cycle here explains the whole magic trick. First, you buy assets that are going to grow in value over time. Then, you borrow cash against those assets using that SBLOC we just talked about. And here it is, the key move. A loan is not considered income. It's just debt. So the millions you get from the bank are completely 100% tax-free. You live on that cash, all while your original assets are still growing, hopefully faster than the interest on your loan. You're basically living off your wealth's growth without ever having to sell a single thing and trigger a tax bill.
Okay, so you've managed to live this amazing life on tax-free loans. But wait a minute, what about all that growth? Your portfolio is now worth a fortune. Isn't there a gigantic capital gains tax bill just waiting for you? Well, this is where we get to pillar two, and you get to see how that entire problem can just vanish into thin air.
This might just be the single most powerful tool in the entire playbook. It's a provision in the tax code called the step-up-in basis. Now, in simple terms, it's like a legal tax eraser. When someone passes away, the tax code says that the original cost of their assets, say stock they bought decades ago, gets reset or stepped up to whatever its market value is on that day. And what does that mean? It means all the capital gains that built up over that person's entire lifetime are legally and permanently wiped clean.
In this little chart just shows you how wild this is. Let's say a founder buys stock in their company for $1 million. By the time they pass away, it's worth $50 million. Now, normally that's a $49 million taxable gain. But because of the step-up, their heir inherits that stock with a brand new cost basis of $50 million. They could sell it the very next day for that $50 million, and guess what their taxable gain is? Zero. A big fat zero. The tax bill is just gone.
$49 million. Just let that sink in for a second. That's how much taxable gain just disappeared, completely legally, all thanks to this one little provision in the tax code. It is an absolutely unbelievable financial advantage. And the step-up isn't the only tool in the box. Oh no. Wealthy investors also use things like tax loss harvesting. That's selling your losing investments to cancel out your winners, and depreciation on real estate, which is wild because it lets you claim a paper loss on a building even while it's going up in value, which then shields other income from tax.
And that brings us to the final pillar, the grand finale. We've seen how to dodge income tax and how to erase capital gains, but there's one last boss to defeat, the estate tax. That's the huge tax that can hit a fortune when it's passed from one generation to the next.
And the stakes here are incredibly high. We're talking about a federal estate tax that can be as high as 40% on the biggest fortunes. So figuring out how to get around this is pretty much the final challenge in the game of wealth preservation.
The ultimate weapon for this battle is something called the dynasty trust. And this is just a brilliant piece of legal work. What you do is you transfer your assets into this trust, which is its own separate legal thing. So the trust owns the assets, not you, not your kids. Your family members are just the beneficiaries who get the benefits.
The power of this is just staggering because the trust is an immortal entity. It doesn't die when a person does. The estate tax never gets triggered. The wealth can just sit inside this tax-proof vehicle, growing and compounding for hundreds of years, benefiting generation after generation, all while legally sidestepping the transfer tax system. It's incredible.
So now that we've seen all the pieces, let's put the three pillars together and see how they create this perfect, self-sustaining system for keeping and growing wealth.
And here it is, the whole cycle in one place, the perpetual wealth cycle. You start by growing wealth through assets, never through income. Then you live a tax-free life by borrowing against all that growth. When you pass away, the step up in basis erases all the capital gains. Then those tax-free assets get moved into dynasty trusts, shielding them from estate taxes. And finally, the next generation just hits repeat and starts the whole cycle all over again. So there you have it. That's the three-pillar playbook. It's not magic and it's not illegal. It's a complete and total mastery of the financial rules of the game. But understanding how it works leaves us with a really big question, right? What are the long-term consequences for all of us when a system allows wealth to grow and transfer this efficiently generation after generation? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me on this one.